Alright, so who's really inconsistent about posting on here? This bitch! I'm wearing a looser, sorry. Hola a todas, my name is Aiden Thomas. I'm an author, a reader, an artist. The reason why you're seeing my face today instead of an animated, she's not even animated, instead of a cartoon character talking over a speed paint is because I decided to change the character's appearance. And I lost motivation to do the rest of the poses. So you get to enjoy my face today. Yay! And today's thing that I promised to do when I kick myself back onto YouTube is a review of, oh, you can't even see the original, a review of Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. Yes, I have 2 copies, no, don't ask. So I will be reviewing Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and after that I'll be reviewing the rest of Aiden Thomas's books because I think they're amazing and more people should be talking about them. So here we go. So first, before we get into the reviews, remember that reviews are opinions, they're not facts. They could be based on my enjoyment or my disappointment in a book. Don't worry, this is going to be mostly praise because I love this book so much and I can't wait for Speedy 2. So let's go into what Cemetery Boys is about. So to start things off, Cemetery Boys is a young adult paranormal romance. Or urban fantasy romance? I feel like either one is correct, but young adult romance. Okay, here we go. Yadriel has summoned a ghost, and now he can't get rid of him. When his traditional Latinx family has problems accepting his gender, Yadriel becomes determined to prove himself a real brujo. With the help of his cousin and best friend, Maritza, he performs the Quince's ritual himself, and then sets out to find the ghost of his murdered cousin, Miguel, and set it free. However, the ghost he summons is actually Julian Diaz, the school's resident bad boy, and Julian is not about to go quietly into death. He's determined to find out what happened and tie up some loose ends before he leaves. Left with no choice, Yadriel agrees to help Julian so that they can both get what they want. But the longer Yadriel spends with Julian, the less he wants to let him leave. So, if you haven't guessed already, yes, I love Cemetery Boys. I gave it 5 stars. If you want to hear more, that's what the rest of the video is for. If you don't care and assume the 5 stars is good enough for you, go read it. Book 2 comes out next year in September. Go read it! Ah. Now, here are my thoughts on Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. So, like I've already stated, Cemetery Boys is a young adult paranormal urban fantasy romance. I forgot to put romance in my review. Anyway, and is now a book 1 because, like I said, book 2 comes out next year, September, and I can't wait. I'll read what the book 2 synopsis is after the review part. So, after I reread the story again in audiobook form like a month later, still great. However, the narrator is pretty monotone, so I don't think everyone is going to take. Unless you're the type to speed up the audiobook, then I think you're fine. I also seriously can't wait to read more from this author, which I already have. You follow a young trans-masked boy for most of the story, Yadriel, the cinnamon roll, and kind of the grump to Julian's sunshine. And I'm not kidding about that. We have spirits, brujequis, a murder mystery, and a romance that I loved watching blossom between these two knuckleheads. In fact, the character banter and interactions was one of the best things in this book. And the fact that Yads wanted nothing more than to finally be recognized as a brujo kept making my heart swell with support and crossing my fingers that everything went the way I wanted for them. What is that? You'll just have to read this for yourself and find out. My God, it's so vague. So after that quick, I guess spoiler-free review of Cemetery Boys, I'll just go ahead and give you my thoughts as best as I can, chapter by chapter. Why not? Okay, it'll be fun. So once you open the book or open the audiobook, whichever you prefer, we have a little Mexican folk song that starts the book off, and a dedication to a person named Alan, I'm assuming. So the song is called La Martiniana, a Mexican folk song, like I said. In case anyone was wondering, I'm Puerto Rican, so my accent shows up whenever I speak Spanish. Okay, let's do this. No me llores, porque si lloras. Yo peno, en cambio si tú cantas. Y yo siempre vivo, y nunca muero. In English, that says, don't mourn me. If you cry for me, I grieve your pain. Instead, if you sing to me, I'll always live, and my spirit will never die. I love that. So in the first chapter, Yadriel starts his rebellious adventure by sneaking into his family's cemetery to get to the statue of Santa Muerte. In the book, she is considered Santa Muerte, and if you guys are not sure who Santa Muerte is, another one is Lady Death. Señora Muerte is another name she goes by in other tales. Did I already say Lady Death? You know what I mean. He goes to the statue of Santa Muerte so that he can proceed with his quince without his, his family's approval and blessing, because he's trans, and in the family setting, women are healers, men are ghost hunters. I mean, they're not like hunting as like these are bad spirits. It's more just like they go looking for the spirits to give them a peaceful send-off with daggers. It's the best I can do to explain that. But he is not alone. He is with his cousin Maritza, who is a daughter of a blacksmith who makes all the daggers for the brujos. Once they bribe a ghost to pretend that he never saw them, they go into the mortuary where the statue of Santa Muerte is and proceeds to do a ritual that will gain Santa Muerte's blessing into allowing him to be a brujo. And thankfully, the ritual goes off without a problem. Santa Muerte recognizes him as a brujo. Now he should have the power to send spirits off to the afterlife. However, that ritual does end up ending with a dramatic, painful situation, and that is brujos and brujequis can sense when something bad has happened to other brujequis, especially if they die. So, this is where Yadriel learns that his older cousin Miguel is dead. Chapter 2. Yadriel and Maritza run through the cemetery, ignoring all the ghosts that are wondering what just happened, because they also felt the painful situation that befell Miguel, and make it to his house where everyone has gathered because Yadriel's dad is basically the chief of the Bruhekis in this neighborhood. And with Miguel's parents grieving over over what they felt, they did learn that after searching for Miguel, his body seems to be nowhere to be found, which is confusing, right? Because he was supposed to be patrolling the cemetery grounds, and for some reason he's missing. That's weird. After some whole delegating from Yadriel's father, Yadriel tries to talk to his dad to let him know that, you know, he went ahead and did the ritual anyway, so now he's a brujo, so he should totally help them out. Unfortunately, Yadriel's tongue caught in his throat, not literally, and ends up not being able to tell his dad what happened because Yadriel's dad seems to is getting a little frustrated with his constant trying to garner attention of what he did, that Yadriel's dad kind of dead genders him. Oh, yeah, triggers for this book. Yadriel is trans, and unfortunately, the world this book is set in is ours, and this book came out in 2020. So take that as you will, but triggers would be a bit of transphobia, and a couple times dead naming almost happens. But the first time Yadriel was able to stop his grandmother from dead naming him, and another time Julian did something really cute to his yearbook. I'll let you know in there. So Yadriel's dad just blurts out, "Stay here with the rest of the women." So obviously, with that shocker, Yadriel goes silent, doesn't show his dad that the ritual worked, that he's got the dagger, that he is now a brujo, and instead, did he go to his room? No, he just turned to Maritza after all the guys left and was like, "We're just gonna find Miguel ourselves, and I'm gonna prove my family this way instead." Chapter 3, Miguel and Maritza go searching for where they think Miguel may have died by traveling his patrol route, and eventually come upon a old church, which used to be a former worshiping ground for an old statue of Santa Muerte. And after searching the church ground inside, they find a silver necklace. What was of the saint again? Yeah. Julian finds a necklace on the ground, and on one side it is an image of San Judas Tadeo, and on it there are words, clearly. But seeing Yadriel's chance, he decides to invoke, aka call the spirit to him, sure that this necklace is probably Miguel's. But when he summons the spirit, it is not Miguel, but a boy named Julian Diaz. And they end up learning that because the boy outright tells him that the necklace is his and that his name is on the back of it. How did you not see that? I love these two. So once Yadriel realizes that the necklace is clearly not linked to Miguel and the boy in front of him, the spirit of the boy in front of him is not Miguel, then as a brujo, he should send his spirit off to the afterlife. It's fine. It's no big deal. It'll be fine. It doesn't work. For some reason, the tether between the necklace and Julio's spirit body cannot be cut by the dagger, and with a lot of poking and prodding from Julian himself, Yadiel agrees to keep Julian around until they can figure out what's up, why his spirit refuses to move on, and also hopefully find Miguel and his spirit, and hopefully help send them off peacefully. So, come chapter 4, Yadiel decides to bring Julian home. Big problem, he is a spirit, and other Bruhexes can also see spirits. So, they have to try and sneak Julian into his house. Thankfully, most of the people are still gone, with the exception of his abuela that was cooking. They were able to get some food and just go off into bed. And by go off into bed, they basically have to share Yadiel's room. And also Yadiel has school tomorrow. Oh, right. And the holiday is coming up. If you haven't guessed from the gold foil imagery on the cover, Dia de Muertos is coming up. So that is a very important holiday, because if they can't find Miguel's spirit before then, hopefully he'll just show up and they can learn what happened. But there's still like days until then, so we're just gonna have to do shenanigans adventures instead. Bringing Julian up to his room, Yadiel ends up learning a little bit more about Julian and the fact that Julian no longer has parents because unfortunately they passed away for various reasons, and that the only family he's got now is his older brother. Except at the moment they don't seem to be on speaking terms. But besides that, they basically just have like really fun banter between each other. And obviously, at the end of the banter, you have Yadiel just trying to explain the importance of what he is doing so that his family can accept him. But then Julian also revealing that he is gay, and is usually surrounded by other queer people, and just being like, cause if it's to prove you're a brujo, didn't summoning me already do that? Yadiel's response is, you don't get how it works. That's not enough. Not enough for who, though, is Julian's reply. Not enough for them? Or not enough for you? You got Julian over here dropping some truth bombs. Anyway, moving on to chapter 6. Yadiel wakes up, and his room, for some reason, is a mess. Because Julian couldn't sleep and really wanted to practice being able to touch and move objects besides, eating food that's meant for the spirits during Dia de Muertos. Ignoring the mess, Yadiel decides to just get ready for school because he got school. Unfortunately, a death in the family for Bruhexes is not enough of a reason to call out of school. Chapter 7. I think chapter 7 was just them trying to avoid his grandmother and just sneak Julian out the door to get to school without anyone seeing him still. Oh, and they do make it to school, yada yada yada. Julian cannot sit still while Yadiel is trying to pay attention in class. Eventually lunchtime rolls around, and Yadiel meets up with Maritza and her soccer friends, where they try to learn more about Julian Diaz. And if, they have any little tidbits of what he does, either in school or outside it. At the moment, mostly just a bunch of guesses and rumors because they know him by name, but reputation seems to be questionable at best, which only ends up offending Julian. Understandable. However, with the constant annoyance coming from Marissa's friends about Julian Diaz and what they assume about him, Julian gets so mad that he kicks one of the balls so hard he sent it flying out of the school, with a really powerful wind following, and everyone is like, what? So, chapter 8. They were able to survive school, and now it is time to hopefully figure out where Julian's friends are. Or do they first have to go to Maritza's house so they can get the dogs? Yep, they go to Maritza's house first. Maritza eats some recently made candy, which she ends up spitting back out on her sister's medical textbooks. Because of the whole situation with Miguel, Maritza's parents are not really all that set in letting her and Yadiel just walk around the city all willy-nilly, and decide to be like, we'll let you go, but you gotta take... What are their names again? Okay, basically her parents are like, we'll let you go, but you gotta take the boys, and Maritza's like, nah, they smell. But anyway, while she's trying to figure that out, Yadiel takes Julian to his house, where they try to drop off some of their school stuff, and then from there, Julian finds Yadiel's yearbook, and end up using it as a means to help Julian figure out who his friends are, so he can try and have a last-minute goodbye, farewell speech or whatever. But because this is Julian, it goes as well as you'd expect. Boy does not want to focus. Oh no! This chapter is when Yadriel learns that Julian is gay. My bad. But we also get one of my favorite quotes from Julian. So here we learn, Yadriel glanced between him and the photo. She's pretty, he said, without really knowing why. He shifted. She your girlfriend or something? He asked in his best casual tone. Julian snorted. No. He leaned back, propping himself up on his elbows. I don't do girlfriends. Yadriel rolled his eyes and scoffed. What, because you're some kind of mujeriego or something? Too many ladies to pick just one? He asked with a flare of annoyance. No. Julian's tone was cross, eyes still on the page. Because I'm gay, asshole. Yadriel blinked. He hadn't expected that. He stared at Julian. Oh. His mind raced to place this new information with the boy sitting next to him. Julian glanced up. That a problem? He asked with a hard stare and a cocked eyebrow. No, that's not a problem. He bloomed in Yadiel's cheeks. And so is Rocky, Julian went on nonchalantly. So we cancel each other out. Really? He nodded. Queer folks are like wolves, Julian told him. We travel in packs. I love Julian, okay? Alright, so Maritza is finally ready to go into the city with him and texts him letting him know that, she's ready, but she's got the boys and they're not allowed inside the house. Remember? Damn it. He was going to have to figure it out himself. Then, create a distraction so Julian could sneak out the front door unnoticed. Yadriel slipped back into his room. Okay, we're going to... Julian jumped. The yearbook was in his lap and he shut it quickly with a snap. What are you doing? Yadriel demanded. Julian blinked. What? What are you... Nothing! The wide-eyed look on his face, accompanied by rosy cheeks, was so guilty that it was almost comical. Look! Julian said, jumping to change the subject as he haphazardly opened and closed the cover. Yadriel's face screwed up in confusion. I can pick it up and move it! Julian told him, flashing a smile. Okay. Yadriel stepped closer. Why are you... Julian quickly stood up from the bed, tossing the yearbook to the side. A Sharpie fell through his lap. Maritza is waiting for us, right? Come on, he said, making for the door. Time to sneak out and go find my friends. Julian told him as he walked out into the hall. Yadriel shook his head and picked up the yearbook. Before putting it away, he flipped it open to his picture. His own face looked up at him, smiling in a way that made him look like he was in physical pain. He wore the same black hoodie, his hair carefully styled. He was about to snap it shut when he noticed. Beneath his photo, his dead name had been scribbled out with black marker. Under, written in lopsided letters, it read, Yadriel. My God! It's the little things! So, after all that's done, Chapter 9 comes in, and they basically have to sneak Julian out of the house, past his grandmother, if I remember correctly. And then we learn that Maritza's boys are actually her dogs. And they are the goodest boys in this book. Just saying. With a bit more banter between Julian and Maritza and Yadriel, they finally make it out of the house and go into the city to figure out where Julian's friends are. In Chapter 10, they make it into LA. Alright, the dogs are Donatello and Michelangelo. There we go. After some walking around, they make it to Julian's hangout spot with his friends, and they find them all hanging there together, just very anxious because they don't know what happened to Julian, which is valid. And in their searching, there is literally some cool shit on the wall, such as hay niños con pene, niños con vulva, y transfobia, transfóbicos sin dientes. If you know, you know. If you don't worry about it. You have Google. Now, because unfortunately Julian's friends cannot see his own spirit there, right beside Yadiel and Maritza, Julian's gang are very wary and suspicious of them and don't want them hanging around there because that is their hangout spot, therefore they should get lost. However, learning what transpired with Julian, or based on the friend's perspective after they were told to book it by Julian, Yadiel actually wanted to tell them what happened to Julian because his spirit is right there next to him, and he didn't think it's not fair for his friends to not know that he's probably dead or that the ghost of his spirit is right there. The more and more Julian tells Yads not to tell him about something, the anger Julian gets, to the point where he ends up picking up a skateboard and breaks it, because unfortunately my boy kind of has some anger issues that he needs to figure out. But because of that, it freaked Julian's friends out, and the bigger dude of the group demands that they leave, and they do. Chapter 11, learning that they at least got some info on Julian, and that I believe this is also where they have to learn that maybe they should probably speak with Julian's older brother, who is currently not on good speaking terms at the moment. They do end up meeting with one of Julian's friends, with Luca, right? Yeah, Luca ends up catching up with them the closer they get to their own house, and tells them about Julian's older brother, and maybe they should talk to him about Julian's whereabouts. I can't remember if this is also the chapter where we get to learn a little bit more about Luca, which is interesting because I know in the second book we're also going to get more of Luca and whatever's going on with him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One sec. By the end of the chapter, they agree to go meet with Julian's older brother to see if maybe Julian can have a last-minute thing with his older brother, and then learn about a family gathering at the Church of Santa Muerte. And in chapter 12, I'm pretty sure it's the meeting with all that. I'm so good at this. Oh, that's right. Yadiel also has an uncle. Put a pin on that uncle. I believe the uncle's name is Tio Catrice. It's been a while. I'm forgetting other minor characters that are, pretty dang important. Oh, okay. This family gathering is mostly just preparations for Dia de Muertos in a few days. And Yadriel's grandmother keeps bringing up something called La Cara del Jaguar, which is an important item involving, what's his name? Guerrero? No. Wow. Suck. I'm breezing through this so fast, I'm missing things. I'm really bad at explaining it to you. Let's just read this part. Yadiel picked out an assortment of neon-colored icing in tiny piping bags and got to work. The sooner he got some calaveras done, the sooner he could sneak out of there. With painstaking precision, Yadiel traced yellow flowers, purple eyelashes, and green spiderwebs onto a sugar skull for his mom. There was one for each ancestor they would be welcoming back on Dia de Muertos, their names written across the forehead of their calavera. You still need to help me look in the rafters, Ida said to Yadiel, drawing his attention. Still can't find La Gara del Jaguar. The what? Asked Ximena, a short bruja whose quintes would be happening next summer. La Gara del Jaguar. Younger blue hexes exchanged confused looks. Yadiel shook his head but continued to work. He always knew when Elita lecture was coming. He piped swirls of yellow and light blue onto the calavera's bony cheeks. Tita huffed, fully offended now. 4 sacred blades. They are an ancient artifact used to perform the forbidden sacrifices. Alejandro gaped. The what? Lita preened under the sudden, undivided attention. Yadriel carefully wrote his mother's name in loopy handwriting over the calavera's forehead in red icing. Camila. Gently, Yadriel put it in the box with the other completed calaveras. He picked out his next sugar skull to decorate, cradling it in his lap as Lita dove into the story in Spanish, not having the patience to stumble through the nuances of English for such an important retelling. Lita had been telling the legend of Balaam, the jaguar god, ever since he was little. He knew the story practically by heart. Balaam, the jaguar god, was the ruler of Xibalba. When you died, you had to travel through Xibalba to reach the peaceful world of the afterlife, where Lady Death ruled. Some people were granted safe and direct passage to the afterlife by Lady Death, like those who died in battle at a young age, or during childbirth. But most had to endure the challenges of Xibalba. In order to make it through Xibalba, you had to be clever and brave. Also known as the place of fright, Xibalba was filled with monsters and death gods you had to outsmart and defeat. Balaam ruled over Xibalba. He ate the spirits of all those who failed in their journey. Part man, part beast, he was fearsome and cruel and insatiable. Unsatisfied with the spirits of those he caught in Xibalba, Balaam tricked humans into helping him cross to the realm of the living so he could feed. He used fear and manipulation to bend humans to his will. Balaam told them that in order to escape his wrath, they must bring him human sacrifices. Without human sacrifices, to satiate his hunger, he threatened to unmake the land of the living, to bring death and destruction to the human race and ensure none of their loved ones made it to the afterlife. To appeal to more selfish people, Balaam also offered immense power in exchange for human sacrifices. Under the threat of death and the promise of power, Balaam's following grew. He gave his worshippers La Garra del Jaguar. The 4 blades had to be pierced into the hearts of 4 human sacrifices, while the worshippers wore a jaguar head amulet around their neck. The rituals were performed at the cenote. The sinkholes and underground pools were the gateways between the land of the living and Xibalba. The blood of the human sacrifices would flow into the cenote, and once the last drop fell into the pool, Balaam would be summoned. He would emerge from the cenote in his monstrous jaguar form and drag the human sacrifices down to Xibalba. There he would feast on the spirits. In exchange for their sacrifices, Balaam gifted them powers channeled through the amulet. The wearer would become powerful enough to snuff out life with the snap of their fingers and bring people back from the dead with a wave of their hand. But power obtained with human life corrupted the mind and poisoned the body. The followers of Balaam killed ruthlessly. Wars broke out across the realm, led by the corrupt worshippers. The balance between life and death was thrown off by so many spirits being trapped in Xibalba instead of passing to the land of the dead, where Lady Death ruled. Seeing the pain and torture caused to appease the jaguar god, Lady Death left her throne to confront Balaam. Lady Death fought Balaam in a war that lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Balaam was strong, but Lady Death was clever. She trapped Balaam in Xibalba and destroyed all of La Garra del Jaguar so no one could summon him again. Except for one, Lita said, holding up a finger with a knowing look. This last set Lady Death bequeathed to the very first family of brujos and brujas. These humans wanted to help Lady Death bring balance back to the world of the living and the dead. She blessed us with the ability to heal the injured living and safely shepherd the spirits of the dead to the afterlife so no one would have to suffer the trials of Xibalba again. She trusted us with the last La Garra del Jaguar as a reminder of what greed and corruption were capable of. Our bloodlines carries on this tradition, serving Lady Death in exchange for our help. Lady Death gifted us with Dia de Muertos, the one time a year our people can return to the land of the living. For 2 days, we get to see our loved ones who've passed. Lita paused, probably waiting for oohs and ahs, or at least some applause. But Yadira looked around. Leo and Lena looked on the verge of tears. Even Alejandro appeared deeply upset. Do you think that's what happened to Miguel? Ximena asked, eyes wide and chin wildling. Balaam got him? And from there, his grandmother tries to console the kids and, telling them of the scary story of the giant jaguar god. And with that distraction happening, Yadriel books it out of there to make it back to Julian. Now we are in chapter 13, which I believe this is a point where Yadriel and Julian are growing closer together, possibly. Oh no, this is where they learn about Luca. Here we go. Well, I guess it's also them growing closer, whatever, you know what I mean. And here they also learn that Luca was part of a gang, and it actually took Julian's older brother to get him out. Because sweet, sweet Luca was easily manipulable. And also had not great parents, you know. Bad stuff. I'm just gonna go ahead and skip ahead. Oh, yeah, that's right. Julian's spirit had a weird moment where Yadriel got to see the actual state of Julian's human body. You know, stuff. Chapter 14, Yadriel explains to Julian what he saw. Is it also, does he tell Maritza? Okay, they end up going to sleep, and I believe the next morning when Yadriel meets up with Maritza, his cousin Maritza, you guys somehow forgot, he explains what he witnessed. And Maritza warned Maritza warned Yadriel that Julian could be becoming a, please tell me the words here. Okay, I can't find the word because I'm just skimming too fast. Anyway, Maritza warned Yadriel that, you know, Julian could be becoming a bad spirit, and that's a bad thing. But Yadriel is pretty dang sure that, you know, Julian's gonna be fine! And if not, he's there! He has his portaje! And if you're wondering what the heck is a portaje, I forgot to explain that a portaje is their, you know, their dagger for sending the spirits to the afterlife. There you go. My bad. Well, Maritza also notices that, you know, Yadriel seems to be growing pretty damn close to Julian. I mean, what's with all this banter between you two? Seriously. Oh God, I'm so bad. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make this fun for you. Oh, okay. The end of the chapter actually includes them meeting up with Julian's older brother, whose name is very much escaping me right now. And oh wait, was it this point? You know what? I actually don't remember what this point was. For the first time, it struck him how terribly unfair this all was. He hadn't really thought about what it meant. When all of this was over, after he released Julian's spirit, and he was gone. He didn't deserve death. He didn't deserve any of this. Julian had literally died protecting his friends. And Yadriel was quite certain he didn't deserve Julian. There was no reason for Julian to help him find Miguel, but he did it anyway. And there was no way Yadriel could ever repay him. He gave everything and expected nothing in return. Yadriel's heart ached. No, none of them deserved Julian Diaz. Okay, I still don't remember what this moment of the book was. I think it was just them still growing closer to each other and Maritza just noticing the two. And, you know, Yadriel just taking note of Julian's character and how much of an awesome guy he is. And I love him. I stand Julian in this house. Chapter 15, Maritza has to bring the dogs again because it's now after school. And I believe it's now on time to visit the older brother. Yeah. Julian does warn Maritza that the dogs have to wait outside because his brother doesn't like dogs. Julian's older brother is called Carlos. If you want to be really white about it, we could go Carlos. And his older brother is a mechanic. And also, Yadriel and Maritza seem to notice something up with his older brother, health-wise. It's weird. I'm pretty sure that's going to come back in book 2. Now, from this meeting, it does not go well, especially when they hear how Carlos talks about Julian. All not great things. All of which Carlos is pretty dang sure that Julian just ran away and left them all behind because Julian doesn't care about them. Why would he? Even though Julian is like right there hearing it all and it's so sad. Obviously, the more the meeting goes on, the more Carlos keeps saying things about Julian. Yadriel comes to Julian's defense. And Julian gets mad because of the stuff his brother said, that he punched a hole in the wall and walked out. He's a 10, but he's got anger issues. Chapter 16. What happens in Chapter 16? I'm pretty sure it's Yadriel scolding Julian about his reaction. You know, punching a hole in the wall and everyone inside being like, who can't see spirits, is like, what? And also Carlos being like, get the fuck out. After getting further away from Julian's apartment, they try to learn more of what happened to Julian the night he died. They are at a park nearby the church where they found Julian's necklace, and they thought the dogs may have found something, but instead it was just a carton of food that was just left hidden in one of the bushes. But it turns out to be Julian's food that he left days ago already. Calling this point a lost cause, they decide to move on from there. And it rained. Chapter 17. Yadriel and Julian make it back to his house. His dad is on graveyard shift, so they should be fine. Oh, right. Does it say it? Nope, I'm still skipping too fast that I still can't find the word. Anyway, the spirit that Yadriel had to bribe at the beginning of the book to, you know, make him pretend like he never saw Yadriel and Maritza in the cemetery going into Santa Muerte's church. He became a bad spirit and tried to attack Yadriel. Julian, unsure at first what to do, decides to fight Tito off. Eventually, with some more fighting with the now bad spirit of Tito, who is trying to unalive Yadriel, Yadriel gets rescued by his dad? Yes, by his dad. His dad comes to the rescue. And it's from this moment that his dad also sees Yadriel's portaje in his hand and realizes that, oh, you have Lady Death's blessing to be a brujo. And he's like, yeah! So, because of that, with this more finalized realization that Santa Muerte does recognize Yadriel as being a brujo, the dad is like, oh my god, I've been a dick all this time. So, I think for now, the dad just sends Yadriel up to his room so they can figure out what's going on with Tito, and if any other spirits are having any issues right now. Julian obviously is pretty freaked at what he just witnessed and begins to worry if that is going to happen to him if, you know, Yadriel doesn't send him to the afterlife. Yeah, the chapter ends with Julian asking Yadriel to release him into the afterlife. Chapter 18 is basically Julian confirming that I need you to do this because the last thing I want to do is hurt you or anyone else, but mostly I don't want to hurt you. I like you. Well, he doesn't say that. Yeah, Julian keeps arguing that he's clearly going to turn into a monster because he feels it happening, and that the last thing he wants to do is hurt Yadriel. Yadriel argues back, being like, you're not going to hurt me, it's all going to be fine, I'm not going to let you turn into a monster, you're going to be fine! In this point, Julian is being like, yeah, just release me right now. But Yadriel is like, no. I can't remember if Yadriel did attempt to send him off, but he was able to convince Julian to allow him one more day, and that come tomorrow, during Dia de Muertos, Yadriel will send Julian off without any more arguments. Julian promises that when it happens, he will also not fight the send-off. After that conversation, we also get to learn more about Julian and who his dad was. Before, he also was unalive. Everyone's got sad backstories here. You're just gonna have to accept that. After the two finish talking, they go to sleep, and come chapter 19. Yadriel decides to play hooky from school, so instead he goes into the city to gather some things that Julian likes, like food and stuff. By the way, with the exception of Lost in the Neverwoods, I'm pretty sure Aiden Thomas liked duckies. I'm just saying. He brings it up often. They bring it up often. There we go. They also end up passing a Halloween store where Julian convinces Yadriel to grab a mask because he heard about a beach party for the kids, bonfire, and Julian is like, we should go! And Yadriel's like, I don't wanna. But Julian's like, it'll be fine! And because this is supposed to be Julian's last day on Earth, Yadriel is like, hesitantly gay. So he gets like a, kind of like a, I think a mask or something, the bottom half is like a skull. Get it? Oh, that's right. And Julian convinces Yadriel to steal his older brother's car. Because how else are they going to get to that beach? Chapter 20. I think this is mostly just them driving through the traffic to get to the beach. Let's see, was the beach first? Or was the... Okay, yep. Eventually, Yadriel, I believe, using Julian's directions, make it to a cliff overlooking the beach and the waters. The two climb out and just kind of have a little date on the hood of the car. From there, they find pictures of Julian and his family. They look through that. After that, they go back to talking about each other. And here, Yadriel asks, is there anything you regret? Yadriel's stomach twisted. A voice in his head told him to stop asking questions, that stuff like this would only upset him. He wasn't used to death being such a finality. But then Julian grinned. Regret? Giving a small shake of his head, he leaned closer. No way, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, like he was telling Yadriel a secret. Anything you wish you'd done? The smile slipped. A couple. This was a bad idea. Too much, too close, but when Julian leaned forward, Yadriel didn't want to pull away. Yadriel's lungs felt tight, like he was holding his breath too long underwater. What was that? A voice in his head told him to stop, that he was getting in over his head. These were treacherous waters, and wading into them would only end badly. But a much more powerful force dragged him down like an undertow. Julian squinted, the angles of his face tight in concentration. Slowly, he brought his hand up to the side of Yadriel's face. Close, but not touching. His stormy eyes slid to Yadriel's, holding a question. ¿Me dejas robarte un beso? If you know, you know. If not, Google! He said softly in the most agonizingly beautiful Colombian accent Yadriel had ever heard. It was pure and melodic, like a song. Yadriel closed his eyes. He nodded. Cold pressed to his cheek, sending shivers down his neck. He sucked in a breath. Julian's palm cupped his cheek. He felt each icy finger pressed to the skin below his ear. The soft sweep of Julian's thumb just below his eyelashes. When he opened his eyes, Julian was staring back. The smoldering intensity made his skin flush. Julian tilted his head. Cold nipped at Yadriel's nose. The soft caress ghosted over his lips, and Yadriel let himself drown in it. You get it? Did you? They kissed! The two end up after just like being in a moment together, and that ends that chapter, because next is 21, and I think that's the bonfire. Oh, no, wait, did I skip the bonfire by accident? Oh, okay, the bonfire happened before the date scene on the car. Don't worry about it. At that point, Yadriel was trying his best to, like, be in the moment with Julian, while Julian was also drawing really close and almost had a first-time kiss there, but then the cops came in and stopped all the thing, and then that's when they had the date on the car. And there you go. Chapter 21. Yadriel and Julian are back at Yadriel's place with the family. The Dia de Muertos festivities are going. Maritza's in a dress. Because Yadriel's dad is the chief of the Boo Hexes, they have to do a whole meet and greet with people. Yadriel is putting up his mom's calavera on the tombstone next to the church of Santa Muerte. But before Yadriel could continue the festivities with his family, he asked Maritza to distract his family for a bit while he goes off with Julian to have his send-off. Yadriel isn't happy about it, but Julian wants it, so he will do it for Julian. However, like the first time they met, when Yadriel goes to try and cut the line between Julian's necklace and Julian himself, it doesn't work, which only confuses them both even more. However, as clearly the whole thing failed, something happens with Julian. He is basically turned into how his human body looks, and for some reason his spirit gets dragged to the floor. Now we're in chapter 22, where Julian, oh my god, where Yadriel goes to follow and rescue him. Because what? Maritza does eventually show up to be Yadriel's backup, because she heard him screaming and wanted to know what was going on, and they basically follow a trail underneath the cemetery. It seems to be some sort of ancient crypt beneath the church, and there they do find Julian and the other people that were taken, including his older cousin Miguel, lying dead on different stone slabs. Julian, however, has La Garra del Jaguar embedded in his chest, trying to convince Julian to stay alive. Yadriel's uncle, Tío Catriz, shows up in an interesting ensemble, decked out in Jaguar stuff. Oh, right, there's a thing about his uncle. His uncle is not a brujo because he has absolutely zero powers, doesn't have a portaje, and could never summon spirits or send them to the afterlife. So he is a brujo without powers. Now, despite Tío Catriz having an interesting ensemble on, Tío Catriz is happy to see that Yadriel has a portaje. Therefore, that means the Santa Muerte recognizes him as a brujo. Ain't that great? Yadriel, understandably, is more distracted on what is going on here. Here, Yadriel does end up learning that Tío Catriz, with the stolen Garra, let's just call it Garra for short, with the stolen Garra, he has been kidnapping people and plans to sacrifice them to Balaam, because Balaam promises him power. Because that went so well the first time, didn't it? But clearly Tío Catriz doesn't care and is just doing it anyway. Yadriel tries to argue with him. Maritza tries to fight him. Then Yadriel comes in. It's now his turn to fight his uncle. Wait. Okay. So at the end of the chapter, it says Yadriel determined to make sure Balaam never gets summoned. Chapter 23, Tío Catriz is over the cenote, incanting the spell needed to drag the blood out of his victims and summon Balaam. Taking the Garra out of Julian's chest, the ritual continues, and Tío Catriz is just inhaling the power of Balaam into him. Yadriel is still begging his uncle to not do this. This is seriously wrong. Balaam is a bad dude. Catriz continues to do the ritual anyway. But in the moment, while Catriz is technically distracted with the ritual situation, Yadriel takes this chance and remembers the importance of the Balaam amulets and runs to rip it off his neck. In so doing, it does very much interrupt the ritual with summoning Balaam into the mortal world. But in so doing, that also caused his uncle to be sacrificed himself to Balaam, because he failed to finish the ritual, and as punishment, he gets devoured by Balaam. And that's it for Tio Catrice. Now, with the Cara in one hand and the Jaguar amulet on the other hand, what's a boy to do? Yadriel is just standing over Julian's body, begging Maritza to try and heal him, maybe bring him back, I don't know, do something. But Maritza, who is, a bruja who heals, in order for a bruja to heal, they need the blood of animals. And Maritza is a vegan and refuses to use any blood from animals to do any healing. So, with the whole situation in hand, there's just nothing more she could do. Yadriel, on the other hand, is like, there has to be something. As Maritza goes quiet, Yadriel realizes that maybe there is something that neither of them can do, but maybe someone else. AKA, he tries to summon Santa Muerte to help them. And she shows up! So, now that she's here, Yadriel begs for her to save Julian. However, no. She cannot, interfere with the affairs of mortal people. So she basically riddles Yadriel a solution. And by riddles Yadriel a solution, he turns to the amulet to bring everyone back. Now, in so using the amulet and putting all the souls of the people used as sacrifices back into them, Yadriel ends up passing out. Chapter 24, we get a surprise POV. And that POV is Julian. Julian is now awake. The wound in his chest is gone. But for some reason, Yadriel is unconscious next to him. And Maritza is trying to save him without needing to use blood. And it works! Hopefully. Either that or the amulet was just enough and it just made him pass out. I don't know. I'm choosing to believe that what Maritza did worked. However, because of what she did, probably took a lot of energy, she ends up passing out right next to Yadriel. So now it's just Julian, an unconscious Yadriel and Maritza, and finally, the other people that were also used for sacrifices for the ritual wake up. One of which is Miguel, Yadriel's cousin. Miguel recognizes Yadriel on the floor, tries to see what's up, but Julian becomes completely protective and it's just like, stay the F away from him. You're not touching him. You just leave him alone. And Miguel is like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna find help. You just wait here. I'll be right back. So he goes off to get Yadriel's dad, brings him down to the crypts where he finds Julian over Yadriel's body, but also seeing like the crazed panic look in his face, tries to calmly talk to him, and there Yadriel's dad wonders who he is to Yadriel, and Julian says the word burn. Mi querido. He snapped viciously. Enrique's eyebrow shot up in surprise. Yeah, good. Because Julian just announced to everyone that he is Yadriel's boyfriend. And I am so happy for them. But first, we gotta get through this. Eventually, they're able to carry Yadriel and Maritza out of the crypts, along with Julian. Ambulances show up. Unfortunately, Julian is just not taking the whole Yadriel goes in one ambulance and he goes in another. But gets forced into separate ambulances anyway, and then I think he was given a tranquilizer or something to calm himself down. Anyway, now everyone's back in the hospital. Everyone's now at the hospital. There we go. Still in the same chapter. After waking up at the hospital, Julian is surrounded by his friends, including his older brother Carlos, where, now he feels totally bad about what he said about his younger brother. But Julian, right now, doesn't care. He only cares about where Yadriel is, what happened to Yadriel, is Yadriel okay? And once he learns where Yadriel is, he decides to force himself out of the bed and goes straight to Yadriel's room. Chapter 25. Yadriel is waking up in the hospital bed. Obviously, his family is there. They're all checking up on him. They're all like sad what happened to Tio Beatriz, but also proud of what he did because, oh my goodness, good for you! You did it! You became a brujo and all this stuff and all the ghost stuff and got a portaje and everything's fine! With the exception of we lost our uncle to Bala, which sucks! Dang, man. Yadriel, on the other hand, is like really worried about what happened to Julian, what happened to Miguel, what happened to all those people, and thinks that the ritual didn't work, or at least his part of the ritual didn't work. But his dad then confirms that they're all fine. They're all safe and sound in their own hospital rooms and stuff. And, you know, letting them know that, yeah, the amulet works. The amulet worked and brought them all back. You used that amulet and you brought them back. His dad looked just as bewildered as Yadriel felt. He stared at his dad. His brain was still foggy. He tried to keep up, to process what that all meant. That's not possible, Yadriel said. No brujo can bring someone back from the dead. No, not any brujo could do that. His dad smiled, the kind that brimmed with pride. But you did. After all of that, Yadriel hears Julian screaming his name outside his room. And he then decides to force his way out of his bed. And the two meet in the doorway. And they hug and they do a lot of kissing in front of everyone. While Maritza also has to let everyone know, you know, we can see both your asses in those hospital gowns, right? Both of them ignored her and they just continued kissing. Now we're in the epilogue. With Yadriel successfully becoming blessed by Santa Muerte into being a brujo, his dad finally gives him the quince he's always wanted, which it basically is like more like a family village acceptance of what happened. So, yay! Before Yadriel goes in to see the rest of his family, there is a quick make-out session with Julian, and he drags him into the church so that he can see the rest of his family for his quince. That's right. The other muertos is still ongoing. So with that, Yadriel also gets to see his mom again because. Did I forget to mention she passed away before the book started? Because she did. Oh, you should have already guessed that when I said his mom Calaveras. You know what's going on. So with that, his dad finishes finalizing that Yadriel is a brujo. Everyone is celebrating, and things weren't magically fixed by an empowering speech, but it opened doors and built bridges. It carved out space for Yadriel to step forward and be who he was, and as he was. There were still more obstacles to overcome and battles to fight, but Yadriel wouldn't feel alone in it anymore. No, it wasn't the end. It was a better beginning. I'm not getting choked up here! So that is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. I hope you liked whatever this video was. It was a review. It was a chapter by chapter play of the book. I did my best. I hope you guys at least had fun. Like, comment down below. If you're not sure what to comment, leave a skull or a flower, hopefully a yellow flower, or a magical sword. Dagger. I don't know, whatever that magical sword emoji is down below to show I didn't do so bad. Or maybe you just love Cemetery Boys. Drop those emojis for love for Cemetery Boys. Because, are you excited for Espiritu? Because I totally am. Yes, I am loud, but I don't care. Anyway, I hope you guys liked this weird video. And I will hopefully see you next week for Lost in the Neverwoods, also by Aiden Thomas. Yeah. Now, obviously, I didn't have a speed paint to show you, so instead, here's a fan art of Yadiel and Julian. I did 2 where you can face them in various directions, but if you have Yadiel facing up, behind him is San Muerte. If you have Julian facing up, he's got Balaam behind him. Not because he is a follower of Balaam, because it was just a situation that involved Balaam. And I thought it looked cool. I don't know, I was doing something. So, yeah. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and stay tuned, hopefully next week, for another video. Adios!